What the fuck is up with all this Qanon bullshit? Man. Well, to all of y'all that think that shit's fucking crazy and say that is a fucking psyop, and I can't believe you would believe that shit. And I say, congratulations. You are correct. That is a fucking psyop. Your logical faculties have not failed you. But your intuitive faculties, or perhaps lack thereof, have failed you. Because if you actually want to know what you're talking about, you know, beyond just being able to spot and accuse something of being a psyop, you have to go down the rabbit hole, man. You gotta look at that psyop. You gotta see what the fuck they're actually saying. You gotta do some work, and you gotta exercise some intelligence and some intuition and abstraction, and figure out, what is this about? What is it actually about? Well, just for a little background, I have never been a follower of that stuff. I'm not interested in spending my days being an autist, as they call themselves, fucking doing gematria, decodes, and going fucking hard on all that numerology, and, ooh, what does this mean, and this is the date that something big is gonna happen, and I'm not into that. I am not into that. Like, cool, I mean, if that's your thing, but I don't got time for that shit. Basically, for me, I went and studied psyops at university before all this shit really took off, right? There is no degree path for psyops, really, specifically. There's not one named that. You have to find it. You have to go there looking for it, and you have to find it. And you pick the degree that makes the most sense for how you want to exercise that understanding of what a psyop is, and go with that. So, if you want to study psyops, you have to study psychology. Absolutely have to. It's a psychological operation. So, I studied a shitload of psychology. You know, read a bunch of the books, read a bunch of primers, read a bunch of Spark Notes, read a bunch of weird bullshit, read a bunch of source material. Mostly it was all weird bullshit. But there was something really fascinating about it still, so I kept looking at it. Anyway, to get back to the point, when I first heard people talking about this Qs and Anons and blah, all this stuff, I was like, oh, I know what that is. That's a fucking psyop. I wonder what this psyop's about. Because, you know, I look at everything. When people were telling me the wackadoodle theories that they had based on these Q boards, they weren't telling me anything I hadn't already read about. You know, in wackadoodle websites, preppers talking to them in person who were like, oh my gosh, the end of the world is nigh. And, you know, I looked at a lot of that stuff. I read up on the Anunnaki and, you know, all the fucking crazy shit people believe. Like, I don't often hear something I haven't already studied a fair bit at this point in my life, because I've spent a lot of time studying what other people think without getting myself sucked into it and believing that shit, right? Just look at it and like, interesting. So, when these people started talking about what those theories were, I was like, oh, this ain't new. Cool, yeah, okay, that's some questionable bullshit. Oh, that's some this, that's that. I'm starting to compartmentalize the things that I'm hearing. I'm like, oh, that's something I read in an FBI document once. See, when I was a kid, I wanted to be military intelligence, but then I wrecked myself in a snowboarding accident and spent over a decade extremely physically disabled. Had atrophy from head to toe on the right side of my body. And it took me a bunch of studying and work to get myself back to normal and functioning normally. And while I would hang and do my exercises and physical therapy and just laying there wanting to die, I would listen to and watch all the wacky documentaries, and I would go and I would look up the weird papers they were referencing and just had myself a look. Learned a bunch of shit. So there hasn't really been anything surprising in the last couple of years. It's all been pretty, you know, pretty true to what one should expect if they've looked at all the shit people are thinking about and understand PSYOPs as well. So yeah, these people are talking about this shit, and I'm like, huh, I think I know what that is. And I was like, yeah, you know, you can just skim a thing and understand it pretty well if you have enough prerequisite knowledge. But I should probably flip through it and just, like, you know, have a quick look, see what's up. So I did that a couple of times. Quick look through those boards, you know, and it's kind of like, okay, I've seen what I need to see here. Basically, a lot of people are super into gematria and decodes. So obviously this thing is about speaking encoded languages. Cool, that's fun. And then, you know, I was like, okay, what are the things being referenced here? What are the source texts? What are the things it's trying to tell you to look at, you know, if you really want to understand what this is about? It became evident, I don't know where, listening to opinion pieces, you know, YouTubers or some shit, that one of the core texts was The Art of War. You know, that was an important book to have your mind wrapped around if you really wanted to understand, you know, Trump's strategy. And by the way, actually, when he ran, I immediately recognized his strategy as well. I was like, oh, right on, dude. That's freaking hardcore. But anyway, so yeah, it was like, oh, cool. Red Art of War. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought I saw. Cool, you know. Don't interrupt your enemy when they're destroying themselves, that kind of shit. It's just all about kind of standing back and, like, being sort of in the shadows and just, like, out of sight, out of mind, but just, like, fucking shit up, right? That's pretty much the mentality of Art of War. So, cool. There's a source text for you. But then it became extremely obvious that one of the other source texts that was constantly being referenced and mentioned and referred to, and, you know, kind of like, oh, look at this thing, it's sort of, like, important for decoding this board. And not enough people seem to have actually picked up on this, but one of the books you have to look at if you want to understand what's being talked about on those boards, what's actually being said, you gotta look at the Bible, right? Now, don't get triggered. I know a lot of people hate that. I don't hate it, you know, but I understand why people do. I get it. It's heady, wacky, far out. But anyway, the point is, be objective, step back, set your biases aside, and recognize that's clearly one of the source texts. Clearly, if I want to have the interpretive skill to know what I'm looking at here, I've got to be somewhat versed in that text as well. And it's a big one, but it's pretty fun. It's good stories, really good stories. You know, like, just, yeah, they got the characters right, you know. So it just so happens that I grew up as a child. I was a missionary kid in West Africa. So I read that book a gazillion times, you know, had to or whatever, like that was the thing. So I knew a lot of what was being talked about, and I was immediately able to see how people weren't looking at that enough, and so their conclusions were skewed away from what the real interpretations were supposed to be. I didn't know exactly what they were supposed to be, but I could just tell that people were a little off. And then that's where you start to get into disinformation and craziness and conspiracy theories. It's like people start spewing all this fucking shit, and you're just like, oh man, that's wacky. Well, here's the funny thing about this particular PSYOP, right? What I realized was that was actually an anti-psyop, right? Which, to do an anti-psyop, you have to first understand how to do a psyop, and it's like a next level psyop. The point of an anti-psyop, I think, is sort of to end and break psyops, right? To try to just smash that shit down. Yeah, let's get biblical about it. Smash them false idols. Get rid of that bullshit. You know the truth. Know thyself. Understand stuff. So that's what was my interpretation was. This is an anti-psyop. So yes, it's a psyop, but it's also a psyop to end psyops. And to try to help people think better. How to help people be smarter. How to use their brains more efficiently and correctly or whatever. Correctly, that's an interesting word. But because it's an anti-psyop, it factored in the fact of reality that in anything that you put together and do, there will be controlled opposition, right? I've shot some movies and I've worked on a lot of different kinds of jobs and even been in charge of crews, and some people, it's just like, man, are you just here to fuck shit up? Like, why are you here? You're just sabotaging everything. You do not seem like you are on our team. You seem like you're trying to ruin this for a reason. But maybe it's just subconscious. I don't fucking know sometimes. But anyway, this anti-psyop clearly had factored in the reality of controlled opposition. And so a lot of people took that bait. A lot of people with selfish intentions or negative intentions, grifters, people trying to make a bunch of money, right? They picked up on a bunch of that stuff and they went, ooh, yeah, money. They ran out there and they started pushing all this crazy shit about how on this date, this is going to happen. Yeah. And on this date, oh, this is going to happen. Yeah. And, oh, I have inside knowledge. Ooh, ooh. You want to hear what I have to say? Well, you got to go to my website and pay a fee because YouTube will censor me. And I have to do it over there. Well, this whole anti-psyop factored that in. It wrote it into its script. And those people took the fucking bait. Those goddamn grifters, man. You know, what's funny is they did a lot of work to spread this psyop while also being caught out by the psyop, right? It became obvious to everybody who was interested in the psyop and everybody who was like, that's a fucking psyop, fuck that, that these guys were full of shit, right? Well, I mean, that's kind of cool. You know, if you can just stand back and look at something and admire its architecture and be like, damn, they planned for that. And it's kind of crazy how, you know, you can't really subvert this thing because everything you fucking do just grows it and builds it, makes it go more crazy. I mean, now you gotta admit, that's genius. You know, and it's possible. A lot of my perspectives on these things I have because I proved this shit out before all this stuff went down. Like, I was doing work, making movies, doing stuff, and trying different things and trying to understand how to make stuff happen in the world and how to be ethical and treat people ethically and the pitfalls and the tightrope of it all. Like, you know, how do you do stuff without, you know, somebody just getting run over? You know, how do you do stuff without anybody being thrown under the bus or, you know, shit on down the pyramids, as they say, or, you know, shit rolls downhill? Like, how do you not do that? So ethics has always been a huge thing for me. And I kept noticing how this particular psyop just kept hammering the ethics. I'm like, that's pretty cool. That I can get behind, and I could admire the genius architecture of a thing that just has factored in all of the ways that you could potentially sabotage it and made it such that when you try to sabotage it, that shit actually blows up in your face and works to further empower the thing, right? And you can call me crazy for saying that's what's going on. But I see it with my own 2 eyes, and I've done it before. I've literally designed stuff that you could not sabotage because all of the ways it could be sabotaged were factored in and turned in such a way that if you tried that shit, it was only going to make my thing stronger. I've been operating that way for a long time. And so I'm just telling you what I see, standing over here from an objective perspective, but with a lot of prerequisite knowledge. So anyway, to wrap up this point, basically, those 2 texts, The Art of War, the Christian Bible, and another document or 2 are extremely key for understanding what the hell that thing is about. But one thing I know for sure is, if the Bible is the core text of this anti-psyop, then all of the weird Kabbalistic forbidden magical practices people are grifting on to try to interpret it are also part of the plan, right? All of these tarot card readers trying to say what's going on with, you know, what does all this stuff mean? All these people divining the future and trying to use gematria to understand it and all this stuff. Like, yeah, those things will give you certain perspective on the whole thing. The problem is, for the accuracy of those things, those reads, those approaches to interpretation is, if this thing is based on the Bible, then none of those practices will work to interpret it correctly, because according to the Bible, all of that shit is forbidden magic. And, you know, if you dig into that stuff, the Kabbalah and, you know, the Zodiac and numerology and you know, gematria, tarot readings, psychics, and hypnotherapist stuff, all of that is very much rooted in Babylonian black magic, or just Babylonian magic, right? Black, gray, white, just magic. And all of that magic is forbidden by the Bible, clearly the core text of this psyop. So, you know, I don't blame you guys for calling this shit crazy, because plenty of people who are into it, you know, a lot of the most ardent freaking supporters are being kind of fucking crazy, but they're being caught out, they're being found out, they're being rooted out in a kind way, in a way that gives them room for improvement. Basically be like, stop that woo-woo shit. As long as you're spewing this woo-woo shit, this forbidden magic stuff, you're not gonna actually have a solid read on this situation. So, you know, pay attention, listen to the directions, read the syllabus, right? This is a class. This is a class on how to interpret what's going on in the world. What do the powerful elite of the world believe? Well, the powerful elite of the world believe basically 2 opposing things. Some people believe in Jesus and God and all of that, and other people believe in Satan. And so if you want to understand what's going on in the world, you have to understand that the elites of the world are either Christians or Satanists. That's pretty much how it works, okay? Now, you can argue that all you want. We're not talking about what you believe or what I believe. We're just talking about what this psyop is saying. And there is at least a ton of evidence for that being the case, that that book, the Bible, really is the core text for the conflict in the competing factions among the world's elites and just the world's population in general, is kind of these concepts, right? Like, this book is at the center of everything if you dig down deep enough like that. People don't seem to be able to get away from it. Something fascinating about that fact. But, yeah, if you want to be able to interpret these boards correctly, man, you got to look at the books that it clearly references, that it says you should read. and you've got to set your biases aside. And you've got to go, well, I know I believe in aliens and Pleiadians and reptilians and that 5D consciousness is going to save us all and that all the shitheads are going to burn and in the fucking polar reversal or the, you know, coronal mass ejection or the cataclysm, like, but I'm going to be okay because I have 5D consciousness and I believe in aliens and I actually am an alien. I'm what they call a walk-in, where when I was a child, I was just tired of this world. I was an old soul and this world was too much for me to bear. So I gave up my body to a benevolent alien species and they released my soul from this earth prison, and they took over my body, so I am actually a Pleiadian here speaking to you, trying to teach you how to meditate, and trying to tell you that it's not about Jesus, and it's not about Allah, and it's not about Buddha. It's actually about aliens, right? You gotta set all that fucking shit aside. You gotta just look at this for what it is. What are they saying? What are the keys for interpretation? What are the claims? What are the proofs? What do you see materializing around you? What do you know about the fact that people can actually manifest what they believe in? And so if the majority of people believe in this thing, that's what the reality is going to be. Or if the majority of people, you know, the majority of elites or scientists believe in this woo-woo esoteric shit, like, well, then that's what fucking basically defines our society. And so no matter what you want to be true, you have to understand what the limitations or what the what the rules of the game you're currently living in are, if you want to be able to interpret any of this stuff correctly. So, you know, beliefs aside, if you think that shit's crazy, fair enough, man. It sounds crazy as fuck to me too. And most of the people, and I will name names, you know, fucking Charlie Ward and, you know, Simon Parks and Michael Jaco, and gosh, so many of these people just drive me nuts. And I've listened to a lot of them because I can have headphones in while I'm at work, and so I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And I'm just working, you know. Why not? 8-hour, 12-hour day, might as well absorb more information about what's going on in the world. Man, these people make me mad, these grifters. You know, someone like Michael Jaco. If any of you know him, get us in touch. I'd love to freaking argue with that guy. And I'll be chill. I'll be cool. But, you know, he's like, oh, I'm ex-CIA and ex-Navy SEAL, and I'm going to teach you intuition if you buy my courses that are thousands of dollars and super special woo-woo, but I can't really talk about it here because they'll censor me. And, oh, you better buy silver. And what does he do? Shows this giant fucking stack of silver that he freaking got because he just charged a bunch of people thousands of fucking dollars to listen to his freaking stories about 5D consciousness and like how to be intuitive. And it's like, dude, once CIA, always CIA. I've read the freaking Gateway Experience papers and shit. And I know a ton about all of this freaking forbidden magic. I've gone deep studying the forbidden magic. I just don't practice it. You know, I know how to interpret what I'm seeing with this stuff. You don't gotta freaking tell me how to have intuition, bro. And, you know, if I'm gonna speak my mind, I think you're actually telling people a lot of hogwash about how to have intuition. So, in a lot of ways, I'm glad these people get nuked from freaking YouTube and everywhere, because it's just like, fuck you, you grifters. Goodbye. You know? Stop giving these people your money. Start freaking exercising your own brains and, you know, take what they say with a grain of salt. Like, everybody's got some good things to say. Everybody's got some smart, you know, shit to talk about. But we've all got a bunch of stupid shit to say, too. So, yeah. Just try to sift a little bit better. Stop getting caught up on these fear mongers and these freaking woo-woo people, and, you know, try to just be analytical and try to be logical and try to be abstract and intuitive too. Like, just exercise all your faculties. You know, absorb as much information as you can, but don't get caught up in these grifter traps, man. Just don't do it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on this psyop at the moment.